All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope all of you guys had an incredible weekend. Got a jam-packed show for you guys today. I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the Denver-Houston showdown from Friday night. We obviously had a little bit of an instant reaction to that at the tail end of the playback stream, but I actually went back and rewatched a bunch of that game, and I have some thoughts on some of the bigger picture stuff for both teams. So we're going to lead the show with that today. After that, yesterday I watched Miami versus Philly. Another really impressive showing for the Miami Heat as they kind of controlled that game from start to finish. I want to dig into their defense a little bit, some of the rise of Kel'el Ware, who's been playing amazing over the last couple of weeks. And so we'll be talking Heat Sixers there in that second segment. We got our second game with LeBron James on the Lakers, and there's a concerning trend with their offense that I want to touch on in that segment. And then at the tail end of the show, like we always do on Monday, we have our weekly power rankings. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing incredible work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us there for more content throughout the season. And then keep dropping mailbag questions in those YouTube comments so we can get to our mailbags. We won't have a mailbag this week because this Friday we're doing our latest update on our contender rankings, which we're going to do about once a month throughout the remainder of the season. But we will have a mailbag the following Friday. So plenty of time to get questions in for that. And then lastly, before we get started, it'd be really helpful for you guys, if you guys could like this video. If you guys could please go down, those of you watching on YouTube, and quick hit that like button. We would really appreciate it. All right, let's talk some basketball. So some follow-up thoughts on Denver-Houston. First of all, again, we did this one on playback. We do 2 playback streams every single week where we watch a game live, like actually during the game rather than after the game. The 2 games that we're doing this week are Clippers-Lakers on Tuesday night and then Mavs-Lakers on Friday night, the 2 in-season tournament nationally televised games. Again, with those 2, like it's like with the Denver-Houston one, for example, when I'm done, I'm sticking around for like 15 minutes to do kind of an instant reaction. So those are kind of like bonus examples of our normal show that you'll find throughout the week. So like, even if you can't watch along with us, come hang out after the game and we'll be breaking it down for about 15 minutes after the tail end. So again, that next one will be on Tuesday for Clippers-Lakers, which will be a more interesting matchup now that Kawhi Leonard is back, although they got smacked down in Cleveland yesterday. But yeah, we covered this game on Friday. The Nuggets ended up turning around and losing to Sacramento at home on Saturday. More or less of a schedule loss. I had heard that they landed back in Denver at like 2:30 a.m. and that they weren't back in their beds till like 3:30 a.m. So that's just a brutal back-to-back. And like you go, oh, but they don't have to do anything until the next night. It's less about that and more about just completely throwing off your sleep routine. Any of you guys who have ever dealt with that type of work before know that like sometimes you get back in bed at 3:30 and you can't fall asleep for a little while, or you go to bed but then you wake up at 7 and then like you try to take a nap but maybe you're bad at napping and it just kind of throws off your equilibrium. And again, like especially off of a nationally televised showdown between 2 top tier contenders like the game against Houston, that's really tough. And then they're down a couple of starters too. We got some bad news about the Aaron Gordon injury. He took a very awkward step in the lane right at the very beginning of the Houston game where his foot kind of slipped out from underneath him and he suffered a pretty significant hamstring strain. So he's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. So in other words, Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon, we're not going to see them again until sometime next year. So this is going to be a real test for Denver's depth. But for you Nuggets fans, I would not get too worked up about the Kings loss if I were you guys. But I went back and watched the game on Friday because we just don't get too many games like that each year where our legit top tier contenders face off against each other, not in like some weird environment like opening night where nobody even knows what Houston's going to play like. This was our first kind of like real look at like established top tier contenders playing against each other. And so after rewatching most of it, I have some additional takeaways for you guys. Again, first of all, I was really impressed with Denver's defense. They executed their game plan extremely well. It was very clear that they wanted to just keep the ball in front and force Houston to make jump shots. And Houston's actually been a sneaky good jump shooting team this year. They were about a week ago, they were actually the best jump shooting team in the NBA by points per shot. And now they're 5th. But they don't actually like to take jumpers. They like to get into the lane. They're actually just 19th in jump shot volume. They only take about 46 of them per game, but they like to take a lot of shots on cuts and then a lot of stuff in like the mid-range and in the short range from their one-on-one guys, from Sengun from KD, and I'd even throw Amen Thompson in there. They take a lot of shots that are like closer to the basket, right? The Nuggets did a great job all game of swarming those ISOs, so they weren't able to get into those comfortable shots in the mid-range that they like to take. Aggressive coverages, so like at the level against KD to get the ball out of his hands in ball screens, and then aggressive help on all of Sengun and KD's one-on-ones, but also getting back to the rim. And there's a downside to that, right? Like they gave up a lot of good looks at corner threes. The majority of offensive rebounds that Houston got actually came from their perimeter players, guys like Jabari Smith and Amen Thompson crashing the offensive glass. That's going to happen when you're helping off of the corners to keep the ball in front. But they forced Houston into a lot of jump shots. They forced them into their third highest jump shooting total of the season. Synergy logged them at 57 jump shot attempts in that game. They also scored just 7 points on cuts in that game. That's well below their season average, where they typically get about 13 points per game on cuts. And Jokic, to me, was the guy that screamed off of film when I was watching this. He was consistently all game long getting up to the level, getting back into the lane, getting up to the level, getting back into the lane, which is not an easy job. And especially when it's not just about protecting the rim, but it's also about securing defensive rebounds. And it's just a casual reminder for this Denver team, like Denver's playing some really good defense this year. And it's because it's that combination of savvy vets that know what they're doing, the Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic crowd, where they're just typically in the right spot. And then also having the athleticism, having the guys like Peyton Watson that can come in and make a huge block at the end of the game to clean up a mistake or something like that. We talked about Jokic being excellent, getting back up to the level and back into the lane, and up to the level and into the lane. He had a big key strip on Kevin Durant late in the game where KD got to the mid-range and he got his hand up in the pocket and stripped him clean. Jamal Murray had a bunch of defensive plays down the stretch. He blocked a Kevin Durant jump shot along the right baseline where he just kind of went along his side and reached around from behind and ended up blocking his jump shot. He had that big steal on the Sengun short roll pass. So he like flashed up like he was going to guard Sengun in the short roll, which tricked Sengun into passing. But then at the last second, he stepped back, got into the passing lane and got a hand up and deflected that pass to Amen Thompson. He had a big contest on a late floater where he forced to miss. But again, you have like the high IQ dudes and then you have the athletes. You got to have someone that can make a big play. There was that key roll late where Sengun tried to spin into the lane to go to the right-handed scoop shot at the basket. Peyton Watson came flying in for that block off the glass. And these are some interesting stats. Denver has now played 5 games against teams that are in the top 10 in offensive rating, according to Cleaning the Glass. And they're holding their opponents to just 110.8 points per 100 possessions in those games, those 5 games against top 10 offenses. They're 5-0 in those games, and that 110.8 defensive rating in those matchups ranks second in the entire NBA, according to Cleaning the Glass. And the team above them, OKC, has only played 1 top 10 offense in the entire season so far. So just a really strong indicator for this particular Denver team that they're meeting what they need to meet in order to compete for a championship this year. They needed to be really good on defense to have any shot to beat OKC, and they're meeting those markers here early in the season. Really good engagement from their vets, the additional depth helping them play hard throughout games. A lot of really impressive stuff from Denver in that game. They're meeting all the markers. Like, we're going to talk about this, like, when we get to our contender rankings. Just spoiler alert, I'm going to be moving Oklahoma City up above Denver, but it doesn't have anything to do with anything Denver's doing. Denver has looked every bit as impressive as I've expected them to look this season. All the things that I thought would happen, like I thought their vets would just be super locked in because they would know they have a great shot. Jokic is playing the best basketball of his career. This is the best Jamal Murray has looked this early in the season. Obviously, Aaron Gordon's dealing with an injury, but he's looked great this year. The vets are all locked in. The depth pieces have all accentuated the team in all the different ways. The only real downside is like Cam Johnson got off to a little bit of a rough start, but I think he's been way better over the last week and a half. Ended up hitting arguably the biggest shot of the night against Houston. That little 3 off the left wing off of the double team of Jokic, starting to get more aggressive and put up some real scoring volume as well. And he had a key play late in the game too, where he made like a really nice defensive rotation on a cut from Amen Thompson, where he ended up leaving Jabari Smith open. But this is exactly the game plan. He did not allow the Amen Thompson cut in front of the lane. He got in there and did a 3-quarter front on Sengun's role so that the pass to Amen Thompson was not open, which forced the skip to Jabari Smith. They throw a closeout. Jabari Smith misses it. That's that like little bit of like additional defensive upside that Cam Johnson have that I think is a really nice addition to this team. I know that Denver fans have been struggling a little bit as they've watched Michael Porter Jr. go and just put up big numbers for a bad team out in Brooklyn. But I mean, we all knew that was going to happen. Ultimately, with Cam, he brings a speed and a little bit more defensive versatility element that I think is an underrated addition to this team. And as long as the offense keeps coming along like it has been, they're going to be fine. The reason why I'm moving OKC up above them has nothing to do with Denver. It has everything to do with Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City just had to experience a certain amount of internal improvement, and they've just clearly demonstrated that to start this season. We will get more into that when we get into our contender rankings. And to be clear, Denver fans, I still view you guys as by far the best upset threat. It's just I used to feel like it was like 53-47 that Denver would win a series against OKC, and now it's more like 47-53, leaning back slightly towards OKC. Overall, though, Houston, I want to kind of move to Houston for a minute here. I also left the rewatch feeling really bullish about the Rockets as a legit top-tier contender. I thought their defense was pretty solid down the stretch. Denver just has two of the greatest like late game shot makers in the league. Like there were a couple of mistakes. There was a bad gamble from Reed Shepherd, which led to him getting switched on to Jokic, which led to a drive and kick sequence where Jamal Murray pump faked on KD and got into the lane and hit like a little mid-range jump shot. That's a silly mistake from Reed Shepherd that got their defense in rotation and gave up a clean look. There was also a breakdown in pick and roll. A little stack action that they ran where Sengun ended up staying glued to Jokic on the roll, which left nobody to protect the rim. So Jamal Murray got an easy little, it was actually pretty tough because of the rotation at the end, but a little left-handed layup off the glass. But other than those two breakdowns, everything else was pretty tough. Like Steven Adams forced Jokic into a pretty tough face-up jumper out of the post. Jamal Murray, the couple jump shots he hit were broke rhythm jump shots where he was kind of awkwardly timed and like had awkward footwork. That one on the left lane line where he's like stepping through and leaning forward. That's a really tough shot. And sometimes you just have to tip the cap. Like these are really good players. Like I know I'm higher on Jamal Murray than most, so that can get annoying sometimes, but I still think he's massively underrated as just a do everything big game player. He had 26 points and 10 assists in that game on Friday night and hit some of the biggest shots of the game and made some of the biggest defensive plays of the game. Like I just remain super, super high on Jamal Murray. So you got to tip the cap to them. But overall, I thought Houston defended Denver's vaunted late game offense pretty well. They forced them into some of the tougher shots in that profile. And then on the other end of the floor, they got good shots. Like they pretty consistently generated some quality looks against Denver's defense. Again, Sengun had a couple of mistakes. He had that one turnover against Jamal Murray where it's like at that point, Jamal's kind of stunting and recovering back to the cutter. So he almost just has to take that little floater in the lane, which is a good look for him. And then on the one where he spun into the lane, kind of telegraphed it. It was just clear that after what happened on the Jamal Murray turnover, he really wanted to make sure that he looked to score the next time. And then he just telegraphed it with this super long spin move, which gave Peyton Watson plenty of time to really load up and go get it. But outside of that, like the reads were there and he made them several times. He had a couple of really nice short roll skips to Jabari Smith Jr. for wide open corner threes. He just missed them both. Jabari's been a good shooter this year. They make one of those. It's a very different game, right? Like he had a really nice play where the Rockets ran like kind of this like Iverson style screen, like a little screen that got Sengun towards the left elbow extended, and Jokic chased over the top of the screen, which gave Sengun a baked in rip through to the left. He just ripped through to the left on the baseline, cleanly beat Jokic off the dribble. There's a step up, easy drop off to Amen Thompson right in the lane for an easy one right in front of the rim. Like they got really good looks off of offensive rebounds. Like KD and Reed Shepherd both had wide open threes in the final sequences of the game off of offensive rebounds. And so there's a version of that game where they hit some of those shots and they complete one or two more of those sequences and we have a different result than what we had on Friday, right? And again, I think their stars could have played better. And like ultimately in a game like that, what I'm looking for is just if you can cause a team problems. And yes, Denver won. Yes, I think Denver's the better team. Yes, I have Denver higher on the top tier contender list. But Houston did cause some issues for them, and that is ultimately what makes them an interesting playoff opponent. And I know we'd all be down for 7 games of Rockets Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Hoop season is heating up just in time for the holidays. NBA and college games are on every night, and everyone is a fresh chance to gobble up a big win on Hard Rock Bet. You're home for hoops all season long. Sign up today, and you could feast with $150 in bonus bets. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but also $150 in extra bonus bets. That's an offer you can't pass up, even on a full stomach. Want to see what everyone else is betting on tonight? Top picks or parlays across any sport? The Hard Rock Bet app literally shows you. It's another reason to download the app, just for the info. Tap Discover, and you can see trending picks and parlays at any time. We talk a lot of basketball on the show, but Thanksgiving and football go together like mac and cheese. Hard Rock Bet is giving you 3 50% profit boosts, one for each Thanksgiving Day football game. Boost your same game parlay or SGP Max so your bets pay extra winnings. Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening, just open up the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. All right, moving on to Heat Sixers. I caught this game in its entirety yesterday. I was having kind of a lazy Sunday and just was hanging out on the couch. And instead of watching football, I was watching basketball. Typically, it's funny because typically I do most of my rewatches in the morning on Synergy, but I ended up catching this one live. It was a very fascinating game. And you could literally tell from the opening tip that Miami was in complete control of the shot quality dynamic. They were just getting better shots throughout the game. And so it kind of felt throughout that they were most likely going to win comfortably. Like even when Philly would make their runs and get back into it, Miami would immediately respond and get the lead back up to 5 to 7. And you could kind of see that dynamic building in the first quarter. Philly had a couple like nice runs of jump shooting, crazy one in the second quarter. I think they had a 16-0 run at one point in the second quarter, but outside of those runs, Miami basically controlled the game from start to finish. And I thought it taught us a lot about both teams because on the one hand with Philly, one of the things that stood out in a big way is, their dribble penetration attack is very based on speed right now and not a lot on power. So when they run into other teams that have quickness that can kind of keep them in front and keep them out of the paint, their offense can struggle a little bit. I think that's where having a guy like Embiid as a counter is something that's important to look at for future potential for Philly. When they run into fast guards that can make life more difficult for their fast guards, they got to have somebody that can kind of get that second defender and get the defense in rotation. And ultimately, a guy like Embiid could provide that power dynamic. And then on the other end of the floor for Philly, just especially in that second half, they're just so small. And Miami has these power players, particularly Jaime Jaquez, where it was like at any given moment, you would look on the floor and you'd be like, there's 3 dudes out there who have no shot to guard Jaime Jaquez. And that to me is a severe defensive limitation of that Philly team, just in terms of their personnel. That's going to be really difficult for them to overcome. But let's get back to Miami. I want to set Miami's offense to the side for a minute because we've talked about it quite a bit as of late. And it was every bit as impressive yesterday. Norman Powell was amazing in the first half. I thought Jaime Jaquez really controlled the second half. We'll get to that in a little bit. I want to focus on Miami's defense for a minute. For all that we talk with Miami's pace and attack on offense, right? Like kick-aheads, early drives, getting good dribble penetration, playing off of it. Their defense is very, very good at stopping those same types of attacks on the other end. This is a fast Philly roster. Even without VJ Edgecombe, who sat out yesterday, Philly has so much quickness on the perimeter, and they get out and transition a lot. And Miami just shut all of that shit off. They run the floor in transition so well, even their bigs. It was really fun to watch Kelly Ware and Bam Adebayo just run up and down yesterday, just keeping up with the pace of that game. I think they probably keep up with the pace of games in transition better than any set of bigs in the league right now. They held Philly to just 22 transition points. That tied a season low for Philly, who's been getting out in transition quite a bit. And then in the half court, steady diet of just chasing them off the three-point line. Really good point of attack defense. I thought both Davion Mitchell and Drew Smith in particular did a phenomenal job on ball all game. And again, Philly's still going to get a lot of threes up just because they have some guys like Tyrese Maxey and Quentin Grimes who will take some super tough threes off of contests. Maxey will shoot a step back 30-footer 3 or 4 times a game. So that's going to get 3-point volume up regardless of what defense you're playing. Quentin Grimes will just kind of elevate off the catch, even when he's guarded. So they ended up getting 21 threes up just between the two of those guys, but they only made 7 of them. They were well defended. And then I thought Kelaware and Bam were both awesome at the rim all game when they would chase Philly off the line. So they would just end up running into rim protection. Philly missed a lot of layups in this game. Like Quentin Grimes would kind of slither into the lane and the Heat players would be there without fouling, walling up. And so it'd be this really difficult layup that would roll off of the rim. And Maxey, really difficult layup, would roll off the rim. Andre Drummond had like a bunch of offensive rebounds that he tried to put back and he just couldn't finish them because Bam and Kellel were there all game bothering shots around the rim. Philly ended up shooting just 53% at the rim in this game, which was their second lowest rim efficiency number of the entire season, according to Synergy. Miami is 4th in defensive rating to start this season. Number 1 in half-court defense. According to Cleaning the Glass, they're allowing just 87.6 points per 100 half-court possessions. I was just really impressed with them yesterday on the defensive end of the floor. And they were equally impressive on offense yesterday. Norman Powell really controlled things in the first half. He's just the perfect guy to give a green light to in this system because he's your textbook, like, simple shooting read maker, right? Like, he gets a clean look, he's taking it every single time. And he gets so many, like, trailing the play in transition. Like, they'll run the ball up the floor and like pitch it back to Bam. And then here comes Norman just like sweeping across like at an angle, and he'll just rise up off the catch and take like a 27-footer and knock it down, you know, or in those driving kick chaos situations, there's every time he gets the slightest bit of separation, he's rising up. And he was hitting so many of them early in the game that he started to draw fouls as Philly was closing out too aggressively. I think he ended up drawing 3 3-shot fouls in yesterday's game. And then from there, it's just very simple, reads, right? Like if he gets chased off his left shoulder, he's ripping right. If he rips right and there's a rim protector there, he'll just stop and pop from 15. If no one's there, he'll slash. If he ends up getting late help, he'll kick it out. It's all just like very basic read making off of the power of his shooting. And like he just dominated the early stretch of that game. And then in the second half, like we talked about earlier with Philly's defense, it just became abundantly clear that Philly just couldn't guard Jaime. They had too many guys on the floor that were easy targets for him. And he just played really simple one-on-one basketball out of cleared side post-ups and ISOs. And like Jaime's got a very unique gift for like understanding the physical leverage battle that happens in the post. Like he's really good at like feeling which one of his shoulders you're leaning on. And then from there, kind of like using little pivots and little bumps to kind of get additional separation off of you. He had this nasty spin move off of the right wing where he like set it up with a hard dribble to the left and just pounded into a full spin and just completely dusted his man off the dribble for an easy layup. And so he's become like the very simple post-up mismatch problem for opponents because it's like if you leave him one-on-one, he's really good at either getting to some sort of short hook or a little easy right shoulder fade, or God forbid he just completely toasts you off the dribble and gets all the way into the lane for a layup. And then as soon as you bring that second defender over, he's really good at the easy kick out reads, the lob to Kel'el Ware when the big man steps up. He just makes simple decisions based on how the defense reacts to him there in the middle of the floor. And I also want to shout out Bam and Kel'el. I thought their short range spacing was key in this game. Like Bam was killing Philly with these like little like 7-8 foot jump shots where they'd get right up to the front of the rim and everyone on Philly would react and they would just drop it off to Bam. They're like 7 feet from the basket, easy jump shot, knock it down. Kel'el Ware hit a couple of threes. He was also providing that vertical spacing window. But Jaime can go through these runs where he straight up dominates the offense for like a 5-6 minute stretch and gets great shots every single time. It was just a wire to wire dominant performance from the Heat on the road against a good team. They've now won 4 in a row. They're up to 11-6. They have sole possession of the 4 seed out east, just 1 game back of the 2 seed. A couple other final shout outs for Miami. Kel'el Ware's been getting a lot of direct coaching behind the scenes about directing his talent towards the margins rather than scoring. A lot of like, hey, dude, like focus on the things that you're great at right now that help the team win. And the scoring will just kind of come naturally with that, right? So like sprint up and down the floor in transition, clean up the defensive glass, make those help side rotations at the rim, attack the offensive glass. He was a monster on the offensive glass yesterday. He had 8 offensive rebounds. And as a result, like he's been taking that to heart and it's been awesome. Another 20 points and 16 rebounds yesterday. In the last 7 games, Kel'el's averaging 15 and 15 on 57% from the field and 46% from three. Just outrageous stuff from the young fella. And again, early in the season, it was like a lot of attempts to try to get some of that to work. The Kel'el wear units when Bam's off the floor, some of the too big stuff. And it wasn't pretty to start the year, but they're starting to gain some real momentum in both their too big looks and their Kel'el wear on the floor without Bam looks over the course of the last couple of weeks. And then lastly, Davion Mitchell. It's interesting because he was such a one-dimensional type of player before coming to Miami. Very much just a primary point of attack guy who was pretty mediocre at everything else. But refining one of his weaknesses, particularly his spot-up three-point shooting, and then Spoelstra just weaponizing a couple of his kind of like under-discovered strengths has turned him into a really high-level starter in this league. He's always been fast. He's always been a good point of attack defender, but in Miami, he's become a reliable catch-and-shoot guy. For instance, if you leave him open this year, unguarded threes, 45%. Last year with Miami, 54%. So he's been consistently knocking down the catch and shoot threes in a Heat jersey. And then Spoelstra's found his offensive talent, which is like he can beat dudes off the dribble and make simple kick-out reads. He's averaging 9.1 assists per 36 minutes this year. His previous career high was 6.4. And it's just a very simple dynamic. He's sneaky, one of the best rim finishers in the league. And he can get to the foul line by getting into your body. So that causes teams to kind of react to his drives. And then he just makes those simple reads. That's very much the meat and potatoes of Miami's offense. Generate dribble penetration through defense to transition and high-level driving kick attack from Jaime Jaquez and from Davion Mitchell, while having the kind of counterbalance of the over-top shooting from Norman Powell. And it's just working. It's just working at a really, really high level. And now Tyler Herro's coming back. So going to be really interesting to see how he kind of fits with the dynamic with Norman Powell, if their rhythm competes with each other, or if it turns into just 48 minutes of that high-level aggressive jump shooting that actually ends up helping them. Very different system than last Tyler Herro played. So I'll be really curious. If I wonder if they'll more or less use him the same way they've been playing, or if they kind of use him as a counterbalance to their attack by running more pick and roll with him and Bam. That'll be something that'll be interesting to see with his return. Some thoughts on the Lakers. Now that we got another game last night with LeBron back in the mix, and that Jazz game was a chore to watch. The intensity was completely lacking for the first 2.5 quarters. The Lakers played some real defense in the late third, from the late third on, and there's some really encouraging stuff there. We're going to talk about this. It's weird. Like, I'm kind of more impressed by their defense to this point in the season than their offense, which makes no sense compared to how I saw them coming into the season. They found a lineup that was really getting stops late in the game. And this is kind of one of the unique things about the way that the Lakers roster is put together. They don't have a bona fide, like, starting caliber 3 to be found on the roster anywhere. But what they do have is they've got a bunch of different kinds of dudes to slot into those jobs. So, for instance, like DeAndre Ayton leaves the game yesterday with a knee contusion. He's out for he was out for the entire second half. And so, Jackson was playing pretty well throughout the game. He ended up picking up some fouls in the second half, and JJ ends up going with Maxey. And Maxey, who's looked really athletic as of late, which is encouraging because the dude's really struggled just to get on the floor and stay healthy, but looked like he was healthy and moving really well over the course of the last couple of games. And what he's provided is like a hybrid type of big that has some real switchability. And ironically, he's not like terrific at anything on defense. Like, he's not like a lockdown switch defender. He's not like an unbelievable rim protector, but he's like sneaky good at all of those things. Like, he will come flying over and block a big Keontae George layup late in the game, or like the final possession where Keontae George missed the 3 in the corner. That wasn't a foul. That was an awesome contest by Maxey on a really tough play as Keontae came off through to the corner. Got a great contest on that shot without fouling. Like, that's a play that a lot of bigs will foul. They'll either be too far back and they'll give a good look, or they'll be too far up and they'll commit a foul, right? Like, I thought, like, Maxey brings some of that. He brings the switchability. He brings like competitiveness on the glass. Like, Maxey just kind of does a little bit of everything. And so you can see the different types of options that JJ Redick has. You have DeAndre Ayton, who's this very traditional big that runs deep drop, is an excellent defensive rebounder and an excellent like roll man, right? but he has some shortcomings. He's not as good on switches, and he makes a lot of mistakes, right? He's a little bit of a mistake-prone player. Same thing goes with Jackson. Like, he's improved a lot defensively this year, but he's a little bit mistake-prone. He can commit some fouls. On offense, not much of a threat on the short roll, but a great vertical spacer and very good at making the short roll reads right in the middle of the floor, right? Like, they all bring different traits to the table. And then similarly, at the end of the game, Marcus Smart was really struggling to knock down catch and shoot threes, getting some wide open looks on pick and pops with Luka. So like that was kind of an issue throughout the game. Rui Hachimura brings a certain dynamic to the table on offense. Jake LaRavia brings a certain dynamic to the table. Well, yesterday, JJ Redick's like, I need speed. I want speed out there. So he ended up going with Gabe. Gabe hits a huge catch and shoot three on the left wing and is like battling Lauri Markkanen on switches, providing really physical defense up underneath him and like flying around in rotation. And all of a sudden I'm watching this lineup and it's like LeBron, Luka, Austin, Gabe, and Maxey. And it's like each guy is a different. Gabe and Maxey are like two very different types of options than some of the options JJ's gone with in the past, but they bring unique traits. Like Maxey is a more versatile big that is pretty good at a lot of things. And Gabe is really fast and competes defensively at a level that most of the perimeter players can't get to. And so like all of a sudden it just kind of worked and they got a bunch of stops. And like I mentioned earlier about how the defense to me has been actually a little bit more impressive than their offense. That first of all is statistically right. They're 14th in defensive rating to start the year, at 15th in offensive rating. But that even the offense stuff gets a little more complicated because the Lakers are top 5 in half-court offense. Set the offense to the side for a minute, though. I've just been really impressed by the defense as being a timely defense. They have these awful stretches. They'll have stretches like the first 2.5 quarters where you're like, what are you guys doing? And when they're so slow and they're also not mentally engaged and they're also not physically engaged, they can look so bad on defense. But consistently every game, especially again against the bad teams, it's happening later, but we're seeing it in some full games like the Bucks game, right? Where they go on the road and they just look fantastic on defense all night. But like they'll just be like, we're going to tighten the screws. And when they tighten the screws, they have some high IQ defenders like LeBron, a couple extra rotations, he had a bad back cut. He lost, I think it was Ace. He gave up a couple of bad ones to Ace late in the game where he wasn't rebounding and he lost a back cutter. LeBron, not a good defensive game last night overall. We'll talk about it in a minute. But like skies for a huge defensive rebound late in the game. And like Luka's getting big stops one-on-one. And here's Gabe fighting against Lauri Markkanen for a big stop. And Maxey's making plays everywhere. And all of a sudden it's like, shit, they look like a good defense for, this 10, 12-minute stretch where they assert control over the game. And on the other end of the floor, Luka starts getting super aggressive and starts getting good shots. And all of a sudden you're in control of the game. And this has shown up in the metrics. The Lakers have been the number one clutch defense in the NBA to start the season. And they are 6-0 in games that have come down to clutch situations. And part of that is like, that's kind of a good checkpoint. So in a lot of ways, like my checkpoints for the Lakers coming into the season were they need to be an elite offense, which they haven't been, and we'll talk about in a minute. And they need to be a above average defense. They have met that check mark. They've been an above average defense, a situational defense. They are much closer to what we considered the Denver Nuggets to be at their peak, and kind of still so to this day, than what they are, or than what we thought they would be, which is like a bottom third of the NBA type of defense. They've been a team that for 5-10 minute stretches really locks in, has high IQ defenders mixed with a couple of higher level defenders, and they just get stops. They've been a good defense against the good offenses in the league this year per cleaning the glass as well. That's the one thing that's like kind of randomly encouraging, is their defense has been able to get timely stops. Here's the downside though. In order for that formula to work, like what the Denver Nuggets were in 2023, where you're an above average defense that can be very good situationally and get stops at the end of games when you need to, that team was transcendently great on offense. And the Lakers have been just a little bit underwhelming on that end of the floor. And there's two key areas that I think are holding them back. One is the shooting. And this is really the fundamental thing that's stopping them from being like unguardable on offense in the half court. And they've been good. Again, they're 5th in half court offensive rating, according to Cleaning the Glass. And it's a lot of that, just like Luka and Austin are unguardable in pick and roll, and LeBron is just destroying teams in the post. LeBron's run 13 post ups so far for 22 points, including passes. That's 1.69 points per possession. He's either just scoring or making an easy kick out for a three or a lob dunk. Like, he's just killing teams in the post. And so their 1-and-1s are really good, and it's causing a lot of success for them in the half court, but they're not quite as good in the half court offense as they need to be. They need to be like top 1 to 2. And then they're 15th in offensive rating because they never score in transition. And that's the second piece of it. Now, I don't expect the Lakers to be some sort of elite transition offense because they don't really have the players for that. They don't have the speed to beat teams up the floor. But what's standing out to me in terms of the offensive shortcomings that we've seen is every single lineup has a couple of guys on the floor that are like, yeah, they can make a three, but they're not knockdown shooters. Like, when you look at the starting lineup, for instance, like Rui and LeBron are the only guys where it's like, if they get a clean catch and shoot, they're going to hit over 40% of them. They're the only two guys. Like Luka, and it comes to the stars. Like, Austin and Luka are not good catch and shoot players. Luka's probably never going to be, because he's very much like a on ball, like initial shot creator. And I don't really have too much expectation there because it's just so rare for him to get catch and shoot looks. But Austin in particular, I had hopes for him at this point in his career to become a reliable catch and shoot guy. I just thought, as a competitor and like given the situation he's in, that he'd put in the work behind the scenes to get to that point. But he's looking closer to Luka as a guy that's like a very much a rhythm-based jump shooter who needs to feel the ball and like take him off the dribble more than take him off the catch kind of guy. And so with Luka and Austin both being poor catch and shoot players, it's causing a lot of these drive and kick sequences to end with, oh my God, Austin's open again, clank. Oh my God, Luka's open, clank. And it's just a problem because they're not paying off a lot of these sequences. They have advantage creators, advantage extenders, dudes that are generating really clean looks, and they'll get a lot of dunks and they'll get a lot of buckets out of their one-on-ones. But so many of these drive and kick sequences are ending in the hands of guys that aren't making shots. And then you go to the bench and it's like, yeah, Jake should be a good shooter, but he hasn't been making shots. Like Maxi Kleba didn't even want to take open threes yesterday. That's going to be an issue, right? Like, Marcus Smart, every single time he takes that open catch and shoot three at the top of the key, I feel like it's short. And so like there's just a huge kind of like shooting shortcoming there. As a matter of fact, as you kind of dig into the numbers, they are bottom 5 in 3-point percentage this year, and they are dead last in 3-point makes per game. Those are some concerning metrics that I think are holding them back on the offensive end of the floor. Ultimately, though, I don't think it's going to come to, like, this is not a thing a trade can fix. The only thing that's going to help the Lakers get to that point where they start to pay off more of these sequences and become a better, more reliable offense, Austin and Luka have to become good catch and shoot players. So behind the scenes and all their shoot arounds and every single little bit of extra work they can get, those two guys got to work off the catch, because they are going to end up getting looks by the way these sequences are working out, and they're just not paying them off at this point. So, like, strangely enough, some really positive indicators for the Lakers. I mean, they're 12-4. They've got the 3rd best record in the NBA. They're 14th in defense. That's a really impressive number for that group of talent. Number 1 clutch defense in the NBA. 6-0 in clutch situations. But weirdly enough, I'm not as high on them as I was kind of looking at this team on paper, because their offense just isn't coming together, in large part because of how poor their catch and shoot play is. And it's just something to keep an eye on over the course of the rest of the season. All right, let's get into our power rankings. And again, all of our lines are provided to you guys by Hard Rock Bet. Number 10, the Atlanta Hawks, currently plus 4,000 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. They got back on track with a couple of wins over New Orleans and Charlotte after a 2-game slide. They've now won 7 out of 9. They sit up at 5th place in the Eastern Conference. Jalen Johnson had 28, 8, and 11 against Charlotte last night. He's averaging 25, 11, and 9 over his last 7 games, fueled by, as we've talked about, his jump shot being that force multiplier. He's always been so great at pressuring the rim and making plays out of it, but what he's added is this counterbalance in the form of the jump shot, and he's hit multiple threes in every single one of those 7 games that he's averaged 25, 11, and 9. That is the uptick, right? Like 25 becomes 17 or 18 really fast if you're not hitting multiple threes, right? That's just an impressive stretch of consistent shooting from Jalen Johnson. He's just making the leap into a star right before our eyes. Also, it was really nice to see Kristaps Porzingis back in the Pelicans game. He dropped 30 with 3 blocks. Tough schedule coming up in the next couple of weeks, though. All in the next 2 weeks: Cleveland, Philly, Detroit, Denver, and the Clippers, who now have Kawhi Leonard. So a tough schedule coming up for Atlanta. Number 9, the Phoenix Suns, currently plus 50,000 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. They really shut down the Spurs offense in the second half last night with physical ball pressure. They had a 102 defensive rating in the second half. They have now climbed all the way up to 7th in defensive rating on the season. I remember I was talking about this last week, but Benjamin Garcia, who covers the Suns, I went on his pod before the season. He asked me pointedly, he's like, do you think the Suns can get to top 5 in defensive rating? And I said, yeah, they have the talent for it. They've got good perimeter defenders, a couple of different types of options in the front court defensively in terms of rim protection that can either play traditional rim protection versus switching. And they're guys that are off of those top tier defenders. Guys like Devin Booker and Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal are all like pretty good perimeter defenders. So like they just have a lot of, simply on paper, a lot of good defensive talent, and it's coming together for them as they've been super bought in. Like literally from the first preseason game I watched them, I'm like, these dudes really want to be a good defense, and it's really coming together. They also had a fun win against the Timberwolves on Friday night. They controlled most of the game until they lost control during an Anthony Edwards barrage in the third quarter, but they just kept playing defense and just kept pressuring the ball. They were down 8 with just over a minute left, and they forced Minnesota into several mistakes down the stretch and made them pay with shots out of those sequences. And they ended up coming back to win on a Colin Gillespie floater along the right lane line, a huge shot after Devin Booker had fouled out of the game. Someone needed to make something happen, and Colin Gillespie did. I would imagine Suns fans are much more enjoying this team compared to a couple of the previous seasons. Number 8, the Miami Heat, currently plus 7,500 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Not going to dwell here for long because we just did a full segment on them earlier in the show, but they're riding a 4-game winning streak up to 4th in the Eastern Conference. Finally starting to get some consistent high-end returns from Kelly Ware, which had been a little bit of an issue to start the year. The typical Miami elite defense that we've become accustomed to, and an impressive offense led by Norman Powell's hyper-aggressive shooting and Jaime Jaquez's shot creation out of the post. Again, if you want more Miami Heat talk, we had a big segment on them earlier in the show. Number 7, the Toronto Raptors, currently plus 10,000 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Now winners of 7 in a row. All 5 starters scored over 15 points in an impressive road win in Philly. Then a couple of easy wins over Washington and Brooklyn. 70% of their baskets have been assisted during the 7-game win streak as they continue to demonstrate really impressive drive and kick basketball. This roster just has a ton of aggregate ball handling and playmaking. It's been one of the more fun teams that I've watched this year. If you haven't had a chance to check them out yet, I highly recommend it. They play defense. They run in transition. Their stars make a lot of really impressive plays happen. Scotty Barnes with bully ball, Brandon Ingram's playmaking out of the post. The two of them have been good on defense during this stretch as well. They move it well. They play really good drive and kick basketball. It's just fun to watch. You guys should check out the Raptors if you haven't had a chance yet. Number 6, the Cleveland Cavaliers, plus 900 to win the title, according to Hard Rock Bet. They smacked the Clippers in Kawhi Leonard's return yesterday. Lost control of Ivica Zubac in that game with Jared Allen out. Evan Mobley basically had to fend for himself down there, and he got smashed. But he lost that battle, but they won the war as the Cavs completely held James Harden and Kawhi Leonard in check. Did a great job of chasing the Clippers off the three-point line. They picked the Clippers apart on the other end and pick and roll a lot at the expense of Zubac. And Donovan Mitchell was on fire yesterday. 37 points on 22 shots. He's on a special heater right now. 32 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists per game on 50, 39, 87 splits over his last 11 games. So 32, 6, and 6 on almost 50, 40, 90. That's pretty impressive stuff from Donovan Mitchell. And then I've really enjoyed watching Naquan Tomlin grow into a consistent role this season. Just your textbook high motor athlete. A guy that does a lot of damage on defense that can be deployed both on and off the ball because he's got such great length and athleticism and he's super active. Then he kills you running the floor in transition and then does a bunch of damage on the offensive glass. Just a type of really fun to watch kind of athletic wrecking ball. Provided a type of dynamic that this Cavs team hasn't had over the years. Their bigger forwards have typically been a very different type of player, right? And like DeAndre Hunter, for instance, is 6'8" and pretty big and strong, but leaves a lot to be desired on the defensive end of the floor at times. It can be mistake prone and doesn't give a ton of effort and motor on that end of the floor at times. And like having just a big, lanky athlete who just plays super hard and can just make a lot of plays has been an interesting dynamic add to the team. 2 straight games where Darius Garland has played. Now all eyes shift to his ability to actually stay on the floor. Again, that's going to be the key for Cleveland reaching their ceiling. Number 5, the Los Angeles Lakers at plus 1,500 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Won't spend too much time here because we just did a segment on them, but the long and short of it is I'm not as high on them as some Lakers fans are. I think some of the issues with their jump shooting are real. In the starting lineup, only LeBron and Rui are what I would consider to be reliable catch and shoot guys, like legit, like they're going to make them when they're open rather than maybe, right? And I keep waiting for Austin to become a reliable catch and shoot guy, and he's just not, and Luka isn't either. And off the bench, they have guys that are struggling to hit shots. And so the Lakers right now are dead last in three-point makes and bottom 5 in percentage, which I think is holding them back on offense. But they do have the 3rd best record in the league right now because they're great at controlling pace. They're still somehow top 5 half-court offense because of how good their one-on-ones are. Luka, Austin, and LeBron are just doing a great job in pick and roll and in ISO attacks. LeBron has been dominant in the post, and they've been sneaky good on defense. 14th in defensive rating so far to start the season, the number 1 clutch defense in the NBA, and all just putting together these timely stretches of defense. The clutch stuff, like a big, late third quarter, we're going to play really hard defense for 4 minutes and turn a 1-point deficit into a 7-point lead. A lot of like those kinds of stretches that are helping them take control of games. Finding some found money in the form of Maxi Kleber is finally looking healthy and playing some good defense. Got all the key stops yesterday against Utah as their offense looked absolutely brutal. Again, we'll talk about why I'm not as high on them as a contender when we get to our contender rankings later in the week. But 12-4, 3rd best record in the league, plus 1,500 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Number 4, the Houston Rockets, plus 1,000 to win the title, according to Hard Rock Bet. We hit them earlier in the show, so I'm not going to stay here too long. But I thought they demonstrated a lot of their upside in the Denver game, despite their stars not playing super well. They did a lot of damage on the offensive glass, considering they were going against one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the league, albeit without Aaron Gordon. But I also just thought they generated really good offense down the stretch. Couple of corner threes for Jabari Smith. One of those goes in, very different type of game. Sengun made a couple of mistakes in the short roll. It was a rough night for him, but I think there were reads that he'll eventually learn how to make. And then again, on defense, outside of a couple of mistakes, I thought they did a pretty good job and forced Denver into some of the lower percentage shots in their profile that they just made because they're Denver, right? I still feel pretty good about them being a legit top-tier contender. Number 3, the Detroit Pistons, plus 4,000 to win the title, according to Hard Rock Bet. A somewhat light schedule this week. They beat the Bucks without Giannis, and they had a win versus the Pacers, but they did have a really impressive road win against the Atlanta Hawks, where once again, Cade and Jalen Duren just bludgeoned a good defense in pick and roll. The addition of Dennis Jenkins is really giving some nice returns to this team. He's now played 117 possessions alongside Cade, and they are plus 17 net in those possessions with a 127 offensive rating. Just that additional shooting and ball handling to support Cade. And then when Dennis is on the floor without Cade, the Pistons are plus 12 per 100 possessions in 328 possessions. A really nice rotation add there. 12 wins in a row for Detroit. Tough schedule coming up, though. This week, Boston, Orlando, and Miami. So a couple of challenges for that Detroit Pistons team. Number 2, the Denver Nuggets, plus 500 to win the title, according to Hard Rock Bet. Once again, we hit them earlier in the show, so I'm not going to dwell here for too long, but they passed a major top-tier contender checkpoint on Friday night in Houston. Not going to get too worked up about their loss to Sacramento. It's just a brutal back-to-back after that type of game with the travel that they had. I'm perhaps a tiny bit less high on them than I was to start the year just because of how good Oklahoma City has looked, but it has nothing to do with Denver. All of the upsides from their added depth and from their vets being true believers in what they can accomplish this year have come to fruition. Lastly, number 1, the Oklahoma City Thunder, plus 180 to win the title, according to Hard Rock Bet. That number just keeps creeping up as they look good and as the rest of the league starts to show their flaws. They continued their tour of dominance with another blowout. They've played 5 straight games against teams that are below 500. They played the easiest schedule in the league. We'll talk about that in a minute. I don't blame OKC for it. It's just making it hard for us to see like a little bit more high leverage basketball from them. But played another below 500 team in Portland yesterday, blew them out again. The fifth straight time they've blown out a below 500 team. But I'm all in on OKC now. And you guys will see in our contender rankings, I'm moving them past Denver into my number 1 spot. I just think they're hitting all the checkpoints that they needed in terms of internal improvement to separate themselves from the league. Like Chet looks way better than last year. AJ Mitchell put up 20 on a perfect 8 for 8 last night as that like legit secondary creator who will become a tertiary creator with the return of J-Dub. And then Shai looks like he's made a nice little modest leap from last year. He's scoring at a rate of 35 points per 36 minutes, cut short by the fact that his team keeps blowing everybody out. And he's at a career high 67% true shooting due to the addition of a reliable 3-point shot. Now, again, they've played far and away the easiest schedule in the NBA to start. Opponents have won just 42% of their games, which is 2.6% lower than the 29th ranked toughest schedule, which happens to be Phoenix. They've played just 4 teams that are above 500, but they've looked excellent in those 4 games. And I don't think any of us are under any sort of delusion that they're going to fall apart when they start playing tougher competition. They just look to me like an all-time great basketball team playing some all-time great basketball. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We will be back tomorrow with another set of game reactions. I will see you guys then.